My parents and sister abandoned my 17-year-old daughter in the desert. No water. 115 degrees. Those words still burn in my chest every time I repeat them. They told me she just needed space, that she was being dramatic, as if leaving a teenager. To fight the desert heat alone was nothing more than a family spat. The truth? When I finally found her, she was barely alive, lips cracked, skin burning, whispering the one sentence that shattered me. They took my bag on purpose. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. And when the phone rang the next morning, their faces turned pale because they knew I had proof. Let me tell you how it started, because this story didn't begin in the desert. It began with something much smaller, just a single notification. It all started with something so small that at first, I almost ignored it. I was folding laundry, stacking towels in uneven piles, when my phone buzzed with a little ping. Just one of those notifications you get 100 times a day, some random app update or a pointless reminder. My thumb hovered over the screen, without much thought. But then I saw what it was, a low battery alert. Not for me, not for my phone, but for my daughter's emergency smartwatch. Allison is 17, the kind of girl who overplans everything. She's the type who charges her phone at 72% because you never know, and carries an extra water bottle to school even when it's only a 15-minute walk. A low battery alert from her? That wasn't just unusual, it was wrong. My chest tightened. Something in my gut flipped in a way I couldn't explain. I told myself not to overreact. Kids forget things. Maybe she was distracted, maybe she fell asleep and left it off the charger. But my hand was already shaking when I dialed her number, straight to voicemail. I called again, and again, and again. Each time, the same thing. No answer. By the fourth call, sweat was sliding down my palms, and I wasn't sure if it was from the heat in my kitchen or the panic building in my chest. She was supposed to be safe. She was supposed to be with my parents and my sister Claire on a simple weekend trip to Arizona. A little hiking, some cousin bonding. They had asked for it specifically. "Let us get to know her better," my mom had said. "You could use a break, Rosabella." Claire even sent Allison a text. "Let's start fresh, just us and the kids." I almost said no. Allison and my side of the family never had the easiest relationship. Too many unspoken digs, too much favoritism toward Claire's kids. But Allison had looked at me with those hopeful eyes, the ones that still believed people could change. "What if they actually mean it this time?" she asked. Against my better judgment, I let her go. And now, here I was, staring at a low battery alert on her watch, calls going straight to voicemail. My mind started racing through every terrible possibility. Maybe she'd lost service. Maybe they'd driven into a canyon. Maybe she dropped the watch and it was lying forgotten in the back seat of the car. I wanted to believe those things. I needed to believe them. But then I opened the GPS map. And that's when every excuse I was clinging to crumbled. The little dot marking Allison's last known location wasn't on a road. It wasn't near a town. It wasn't anywhere near safety. It was in the middle of a hiking trail, deep in the desert, miles away from the nearest highway. Red sand stretched for miles, jagged rocks cutting the horizon. And the temperature gauge read 115 degrees. My throat went dry. No teenager, no matter how cautious, survives long out there without water, without shade, without someone watching over them. I grabbed the phone and called my mom immediately. She answered on the second ring, almost like she'd been waiting. "Oh, she wandered off a little," she said, voice calm, too calm. "She got upset over something. She just needed some space." Space. In the desert. At noon. Before I could even respond, Claire's voice came through on speaker. "She's being dramatic, Rosabella. You know how she is." I didn't say a word. Not one. Because if I did, I would have unleashed every ounce of rage in my body. Instead, I hung up. I didn't have time to argue. I didn't have time to listen to their lies. My daughter was out there, alone, and her watch was dying. I opened my laptop with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, booked the earliest flight to Flagstaff without even checking the price. My mind was sharp now, cutting through every distraction. There was no room for denial anymore. I could see it so clearly. My daughter, hiking boots sinking into hot sand, her ridiculous sun hat tilted against the blazing sun, her water bottle already half empty. I had packed it with her myself. I had kissed her forehead and told her to hydrate. I had hugged her twice and told her I loved her 3 times like some superstition could keep her safe. And now, all I could think was this. If I waited even one more hour, would she still be alive? I looked again at that blinking dot on the map. So small, so fragile. My parents thought it was fine. My sister thought she was just being difficult. But I knew better than anyone that this wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a mistake. Something was horribly wrong. The house around me blurred into nothing. The laundry stayed piled on the couch. I didn't even remember locking the door behind me. All I knew was that my daughter was stranded in the desert with no water, her watch dying, and the sun beating down like a punishment. And the worst part? Somewhere deep in my bones, I knew she hadn't just been left behind. She'd been abandoned, on purpose. By the time I got to the airport, I was running on pure adrenaline. My body was shaking, but my mind had locked into this strange tunnel vision. Panic wrapped so tightly around focus that I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I moved like a machine, through security, down the terminal, onto the plane. I don't remember what I ate, if I drank water, or even if I spoke to anyone. All I remember was the image of my daughter in that desert, heat radiating off her skin, lips cracked, body collapsing in slow motion, and I kept hearing the same sentence in my head like a siren. She doesn't have time. When the plane touched down in Flagstaff, I spotted him immediately. Luis was waiting near the rental jeeps, arms crossed, a cooler and a medkit by his feet. I hadn't seen him in years. Back when I was still married, we had spent a summer in the canyons together. Me, the overprepared mom, him, the wilderness survival instructor who seemed to know exactly how to read both land and people. We had drifted apart, as people do, but when I called, he hadn't asked for explanations, just asked, "Where?" "Let's go find your kid," he said as soon as I reached him. His voice was steady, like an anchor. I grabbed the water bottles he offered and climbed into the Jeep without hesitation. The drive to the trailhead was quiet. I stared at the tracker on my phone, the tiny dot still sitting still in the middle of nowhere. Every mile we covered felt like a race against a clock I couldn't see. Luis kept his eyes on the road, but his presence alone kept me from unraveling. He knew what I didn't need: sympathy, questions, or false comfort. What I needed was someone to move with me. When we pulled up to the trail, the sun was already dipping low, casting long, burning shadows across the rocks. The ranger station nearby looked deserted, windows shuttered, no sign of life. Louise studied the map, then glanced at my phone. "She's way off the main path," he muttered. "If she hasn't been moving, that's not good." The words cut into me, but I swallowed them down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Because tears didn't save anyone. Movement did. We started hiking, packs heavy on our backs, boots sinking into red sand that seemed to cling like glue. The air felt like it was trying to peel the skin off my face, hot and dry enough to burn my throat with every breath. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Luis walked ahead, scanning the ground with eyes trained to notice what most people would miss. It wasn't long before he spotted the first sign, a torn granola bar wrapper, half buried in the dirt. My knees nearly buckled. He picked it up, held it for a second, then nodded. "She's been here." We pressed on, each step heavier than the last. My mind kept flashing between hope and horror. I could see her laughing at home, rolling her eyes, at my constant reminders, hugging me quickly before heading out the door. And then I could see her lying face down in the sand, her watch blinking its last light, her body still. Another hour passed, maybe less, maybe more. I lost track. The desert plays tricks with time. My lips cracked, sweat poured down my back, and I stopped wiping it away because there was no point. Every ounce of energy had to go into forward motion. Then Luis bent down suddenly, holding up a scarf tied to a rock. "Allison's scarf." "She's trying to be found," he said. That sentence nearly broke me. My daughter, 17 years old, was out here marking a trail, fighting to survive while the very people who were supposed to protect her had driven away. I bit down hard, forcing myself not to collapse. We didn't have time. We kept moving. At one point, I thought I saw a shadow flicker in the distance, like a figure slumped against the rocks. But it was only the heat bending light into cruel illusions. My throat ached. My body screamed, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Then, we saw it, a water bottle lying sideways in the dust. Luis picked it up, felt it, and said, "Still warm." My chest clenched. She was close. We climbed a rock ledge, the sun setting behind us, painting the desert in shades of fire. And then I saw it. A flash of movement under an outcrop of jagged stone. My legs took over before my brain caught up. I ran. Sand kicked. Up behind me, my lungs burned, but I didn't care. I scrambled down the ledge, nearly tripping until I reached her. Allison. She was curled against the rocks, her ridiculous sun hat still on, her eyes half open, skin flushed a terrifying shade of red. When I touched her, her body radiated heat like an oven. I dropped to my knees and pulled her into my arms, dust sticking to my tears, even though I didn't remember letting them fall. "Baby, I'm here," I whispered, brushing the sand off. Her cheeks. Her lips moved, a dry whisper I almost missed. They took my bag." I froze. "What?" I leaned closer, heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. "They took it. On purpose." Her words shattered me. This wasn't just neglect. This wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. My family had left my daughter to die. I held her tighter, my chest aching with both fury and relief. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Luis knelt beside me, already pulling supplies from the med kit, pouring water slowly, carefully, against her lips. The desert around us was silent, but in my mind, I heard every scream I wasn't letting out. Because even in that moment of rescue, I knew the truth. This wasn't over. not by a long shot. When Allison's voice came back in that hospital bed, the first thing she said wasn't about the heat or the pain or even the fear of being alone out there. It was a whisper that made my blood run cold. They took my bag on purpose. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to shield her from the truth, to pretend that what happened was just a horrible mistake. But the look in her eyes, sharp, tired, but certain, told me she already knew better. I wish I could say I was shocked, but the truth is, a part of me had been waiting for something like this, even if I didn't want to admit it. My family has never been the screaming, table-flipping kind of dysfunctional. They don't throw plates or slam doors. No, we're the polite cruelty type. The kind of family where the cuts come wrapped in smiles and favoritism is brushed off as a misunderstanding. Growing up, Claire was the chosen one. She was loud, sparkly, dramatic, and everything my parents seemed to adore. She could flunk a class and still get a celebration cake for trying her best. I once brought home an A and was asked if I was distracted by boys. When Claire threw tantrums at Thanksgiving, she got comforted with bubble baths and forts, made of blankets. When I cried, I was told I was ruining the mood. For years, I believed them. Believed there was something wrong with me. Too much, not enough, never right. And then I had Allison. From the moment she opened her eyes, she looked at me like I was the sun, like I mattered. She grew into a girl who didn't smile just because someone told her to, who asked hard questions, who didn't mold herself into what anyone wanted. She reminded me of myself, only braver. And because of that, my parents never quite knew what to do with her. They tried, bought her glitter pens and pink sweaters. She chose black hoodies and legal trivia instead. The only person who saw her for who she was? My grandmother, Rose. 92, sharp as ever, the kind of woman who could scare a storm in two, waiting until she finished her breakfast. Rose adored Allison from day one. Finally, she said, someone in this family who listens. It didn't take long before Rose made it official. Over tea and shortbread cookies one afternoon, she slid her will across the table and said, "Half of what I leave behind will go to Allison. The rest will be divided between Claire's children. Don't argue." I hadn't asked for it, and neither had Allison, but I knew what it meant. It was a declaration. And in my family, declarations always lit fires. Claire found out days later because secrets in our family leak faster than water through a sieve. The phone call was pure fury. "Are you kidding me?" she screamed. "That's 3 kids against 1. Are you seriously okay with this?" I reminded her I didn't write the will. Rose did. But Claire didn't want logic. She wanted someone to blame. She hung up. An hour later, my mother called, calm and condescending, saying Claire was struggling, and maybe Allison was manipulating Rose. That word, manipulative, cut deep. Allison, who spent her life walking on eggshells to avoid making people uncomfortable, being painted as some kind of schemer. It was laughable, if it hadn't been so cruel. From there, the chill began. Allison was slowly erased from group chats, cropped out of photos, left out of plans. When Claire's son had a birthday party, every picture posted online showed kids smiling, cake-smeared faces, laughter. Allison was there too, but not in a single photo. That night, she asked me, "Do you think they hate me?" I lied and said no. And then came the invitation. Out of nowhere, my mom suggested a bonding trip to Arizona. Hiking, fresh air. Just the kids. Claire followed with a text to Allison. Let's start fresh. For real this time. Allison stared at it for a long time before whispering, What, if this time is different? I should have said no. I should have trusted my instincts. But I wanted to believe too. So I packed her bag with sunscreen, backup chargers, trail mix, all the things a mom overpacks. I hugged her twice, told her I loved her 3 times, and let her go. According to Allison, the setup happened on the 3rd day. They were on a dry ridge west of Flagstaff. Claire pointed toward the rocks and said, Go take some pictures up ahead. We'll wait here. So Allison did. She walked ahead, camera in hand, the desert stretching in every direction. 10 minutes. Later she turned back, and the car was gone. At first she thought maybe they'd circled around. But then she noticed something chilling. Her main bag, the one with her backup GPS, her charger, her second water bottle, her map, her ID, was missing. Not misplaced. Gone. She realized quickly this wasn't an accident. They had taken it. She waited 2 hours before she stopped waiting. The sun beat down, the heat climbed past 1:15, and every minute was a battle. She finally scribbled a note, tucked it in her sock. My name is Allison. My family left me. My mom's number is in my camera bag. Please call her. That's what she told me in the hospital. But in the desert, as her body overheated, she managed to say something else first. They took my bag on purpose. And in that moment, I knew exactly why. It wasn't about a fight or about Allison being dramatic. It was about money, about inheritance, about Claire's kids getting more if Allison was no longer in the picture. My parents and Claire thought they could make it look like a tragic accident, a teenager who wandered too far and couldn't handle the desert heat. But they underestimated her. They underestimated me, and they forgot who was watching. The night after Allison was stabilized in the hospital, I sat in the dim light of a vending machine hallway with sand still clinging to my boots. She was sleeping, ivy dripping beside her, but my mind wasn't resting. Every beat of my heart reminded me how close I had come to losing her, and how calm my family had sounded on the phone when I asked where she was. That calm was what told me everything. They had known. And if they thought they could rewrite the story later, they were wrong. I opened a folder on my phone labeled Just in Case. I'd been collecting things for years, screenshots of texts, voicemails, photos, every tiny piece of proof of their polite cruelty. Now, I added more. Allison's hospital intake forms, the note she had written and tucked in her sock, the GPS log from her smartwatch, and the video clip from her vlogging camera where Claire's voice could be heard telling her, Go check out that ridge. We'll wait here. These weren't suspicions anymore. These were receipts. The first person I sent them to was Benson, Grandma Rose's attorney. He was a meticulous man, the type who once mailed me a handwritten apology for spilling wine on my coat at a party 5 years ago. I knew he handled every update of Rose's estate. My subject line was short. Urgent regarding Arizona incident. I didn't include commentary, just attachments. Facts lined up like dominoes. He replied within an hour, received. Meeting with Rose tomorrow morning. The second person I contacted was Detective Moreno, a small-town sheriff's detective near Flagstaff. I didn't call 911 screaming. I called calmly, explained in clipped sentences. Did they report her missing? No. Did they leave the area? Yes. Did they ever come back? No. Do I have reason to believe they left her on purpose? I do, and I can prove it. After a long silence, he said, "Upload everything. Don't send it over email. I'll give you a secure link." His voice was steady, but I could hear the weight behind it. Back at the hospital, Allison looked at me with those pale, tired eyes and asked, "Are they coming?" I shook my head. "Not unless it's in handcuffs." She gave me the smallest smile, cracked but fierce. It was enough fuel for me to keep going. A week later, we walked into Grandma Rose's estate for Sunday brunch. But this wasn't just brunch. The air was tight, heavy, like everyone was waiting for a bomb to drop. Claire was too composed at the far end of the table. My parents sat with stiff backs, buttering biscuits like nothing had happened. And Rose stood by the fireplace, cane in one hand, papers in the other. When she cleared her throat, the room went silent. 92 years old, and still, she could command silence like no one else. "Some of you have disappointed me profoundly," she said, eyes sweeping the table. "You tried to hurt what I love to protect what you think you're owed. You will not succeed." Claire's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet until Rose lifted the papers in her hand. "Effective immediately, my estate will be inherited in full by one person." The room froze. My father whispered, "Allison, this is insane." My mother looked like she'd swallowed glass. And Claire exploded. "She's manipulating." "You!" she shouted, pointing at Allison. "She's 17! She staged all of this for attention." "She nearly died," I said flatly. Claire hissed back, "Oh, please. You probably told her to fake it. You've been playing the martyr your whole life." Grandma Rose's voice cut through the chaos, cold as steel. "So you admit you lied to her? You told her to go ahead while you left?" Claire's mouth opened, then shut. My mother looked down. My father sipped his water like he wished it were something stronger. Rose stepped forward. "I have reviewed the evidence. I have spoken with my attorney, and I have pressed charges." Claire's face went pale. "What?" "The sheriff will contact you this week," Rose said. "You can't do this," my mother snapped. "She's your granddaughter." Rose's gaze didn't waver. "And Allison is my great-granddaughter. She has more of me in her than either of you ever did. You could have lit the table on fire and no one would have moved." Claire stood, voice shaking with rage. "You always hated me. You always wanted Rosabella to win." I smiled for the first time that day. "No," I said. "You did this. I just made sure people saw it." The fallout came fast. Formal charges were filed. Reckless endangerment of a minor, neglect, failure to report a missing person, conspiracy to interfere with a trust, and attempted manslaughter. The judge later called it exactly what it was: a coordinated act of abandonment with financial motive. Claire got 9 years, no parole for the first 5. My parents each got 6. Their lawyers tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, a tragic miscommunication, but the receipts didn't lie. Neither did Allison when she stood in court, steady and sharp, and told the judge, "I don't think they cared if I made it out. I think they were hoping I wouldn't." The room was silent. When the gavel came down, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief, not joy, not triumph, just the heavy weight of knowing the truth was finally undeniable. Justice had cracked my family open, and everything rotten spilled out. As we walked out of that courtroom into the sunlight, Allison took a deep breath beside me. She didn't say a word, and she didn't need to. Some victories are loud. This one was quiet, permanent, and ours. In the months after the trial, life looked different. The family I once thought was unshakable shattered into pieces, and honestly, I didn't bother picking them up. Allison slowly regained her strength. Therapy became her choice, not mine. And she told me she needed a place where she didn't have to protect me from her feelings. I respected that. Some days she still keeps her guard up, but more often now, I catch her laughing at videos again, leaving cups on the counter or blowing a whistle on our hikes just to annoy me. Every sound of it feels like proof that she's still here. We don't do family holidays anymore. No big tables, no polite cruelty passed around with the gravy. Instead, we hike, we overpack water bottles, we charge every device twice, and we make new traditions that belong only to us. Claire and my parents got their sentences. 9 years for her, 6 years each for them. The judge called it what it was, not neglect, but a coordinated act of abandonment. Justice wasn't loud, but it was permanent. And here's what I learned. Not all family is good. Some people just happen to share your blood. The real family is the one who shows up, the one who fights for you, the one who would cross a desert at sunset to bring you home. So I'll ask you, did I go too far or not? Nearly far enough? Let me know in the comments, hit subscribe, and join me for more stories where truth and justice refuse to stay buried.